The night I came home on leave after basic training, my stepfather slapped me across the living room, but he didn't know the body cam in my pocket was recording. I hit send on 3 dots to Red Owl, our unit's group chat, and 17 minutes later, my mother's driveway lit up like a stadium. He thought he'd teach me one more lesson, but this time, I brought discipline, evidence, and an entire squad. My name is Harper Lane, and for 27 years, I lived in a house that never felt like home. Maple Ridge, North Cascadia, population 12,000 on a good day, wasn't the kind of place people escaped from. It was the kind of place people got stuck in, like flies in amber, their wings beating uselessly against the golden prison of small-town expectations. Our house on Birch Street looked normal enough from the outside: white siding, black shutters, the obligatory American flag my stepfather Roy hung crooked every Memorial Day. Inside was different. My mother Lydia met Roy Maddox when I was 15. She'd been working double shifts at the hospital cafeteria, still raw from Dad's death 2 years prior. Roy swept in with his contractor's truck and calloused hands, promising stability. What he delivered was control, wrapped in the language of care. "Just looking out for you girls," he'd say, pocketing Mom's debit card. "Can't have you wasting money on nonsense." The nonsense included my school supplies, new shoes when mine split at the seams, and once I'll never forget antibiotics when I had strep throat. That time, I stole $20 from his wallet and walked 4 miles to the clinic in February sleet. My fever broke 3 days later. The bruise on my ribs from when he found out took 3 weeks to fade. I learned to navigate his moods like a sailor reads weather. The grip on his beer bottle told me if I should skip dinner. The angle of his shoulders in his recliner determined whether I could risk a shower or should stay locked in my room. Mom developed her own survival dance: nervous laughter, frantic cleaning, those pills she thought I didn't know about. Every year on my birthday, December 3rd, they forgot. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just forgot. Like I was furniture that had always been there. By 25, I'd stopped expecting the acknowledgement. By 26, I'd stopped caring. By 27, I had a plan. The metal box lived under loose floorboards in my closet. Inside 6 years of evidence I'd never had the courage to use. Photos of bruises time-stamped and cataloged, medical bills from the ER visits I'd paid cash for, audio recordings from my phone, muffled but clear enough Roy's voice slurring threats, Mom's sobs, the crash of plates, a spiral notebook documenting dates, times, witnesses who'd looked away, pay stubs showing the money that disappeared, the credit cards he'd opened in my name, maxed and defaulted. I'd gathered it all with the vague idea that someday, somehow, it would matter, that someday I'd be brave enough to make it matter. The Army recruitment office sat between a vape shop and a payday loan place, Maple Ridge's holy trinity of desperation. Staff Sergeant Williams, a black woman with eyes that had seen too much, looked at my application and then at my face, reading the story written in my careful posture and the way I flinched when the door slammed. Running from something or toward something, she asked. "Both," I said. She nodded like that was the only answer that made sense. "Basic training starts in 6 weeks. Fort Clearwater. You ready to find out who you really are?" I signed my name with hands that didn't shake. For the first time in years, my signature felt like a declaration, not a surrender. The night before I left, I stood in my childhood room, memorizing the water stain on the ceiling, the crack in the wall Roy had punched instead of me, the window that didn't lock properly my escape route on the worst nights. I pulled out the metal box one last time, running my fingers over the evidence of years I'd never get back. "Last time," I whispered to the empty room. "Last time you pushed me down." Mom drove me to the bus station at 4:30 in the morning while Roy slept off another bender. She hugged me like she was trying to press apologies through my skin. "You could stay," she said, not meaning it. "No," I said, meaning it completely. I really couldn't. The bus pulled away as the sun cracked the horizon. In my duffel bag, between regulation underwear and running shoes, the metal box waited. Evidence. Insurance. a promise to myself that I'd come back different, strong enough to use it. I didn't know then that strength wasn't what I'd find at Fort Clearwater. It was something better witnesses who wouldn't look away. Fort Clearwater broke me down in the first week and rebuilt me in the second. The drill sergeants didn't care about my past. They cared about my push-ups, my 2-mile time, my ability to disassemble an M4 in the dark. When Drill Sergeant Rodriguez screamed in my face about my pathetic obstacle course performance, something strange happened. I didn't flinch. His yelling had purpose, structure, rules. It was nothing like Roy's random explosions. This was training, not terror. "Lane, why are you smiling?" Rodriguez barked on day 10. "This is the safest I've felt in years." "Drill Sergeant." The words escaped before I could stop them. He paused, his expression shifting for half a second before the mask returned. "Well, you're about to feel real safe doing 50 burpees. Move." I moved, and for the first time, physical exhaustion felt like achievement, not punishment. Basic training taught me to breathe through chaos. Box breathing 4 counts in. Hold 4, 4 counts out. Hold 4. We used it during gas chamber training, but I found myself using it at night, processing years of held breath. The regulation, the structure, the clear consequences for clear actions. It was like learning a new language after years of guessing at angry silence. Week 3. I met them, the ones who would become Red Owl. Private First Class Vega found me crying behind the barracks after mail call another birthday forgotten, even from a distance. She sat down without asking, pulled out contraband Skittles, and said, "Family shit." When I nodded, she said, "Yeah, me too." And we ate processed sugar in companionable silence. Vega was brilliant with anything electronic. Could make a radio from spare parts in spite. She'd grown up in foster care, aged out, and joined up because, in her words, 3 meals and a clear chain of command beats the hell out of couch surfing. Private Moreno had been a paramedic in Houston before enlisting. She caught me rewrapping my feet wrong after a 12-mile ruck march and fixed them with gentle efficiency that made me cry again. I'd forgotten what non-transactional care felt like. "You guard yourself like someone who's used to medical care coming with questions," she observed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Then there was Price, our communications specialist, a farm kid from Iowa who noticed everything and said half of it. He set up our encrypted group chat during week 5, named it Red Owl after a night training exercise where we'd gotten lost together and found our way back by following an actual red owl. Vega said it was a sign. Moreno said it was coincidence. Price said it didn't matter what it was, just that we'd found it together. 3 dots means emergency extraction needed, Price explained, showing us the app. Real-world application, not just training scenarios. "Why would we need that after basic?" Moreno asked. Price looked at me, then away. "Sometimes the real enemy's at home." The 128th Brigade, 3rd Logistics Battalion became my unit assignment. Supply and logistics not glamorous, but vital. We learned convoy procedures, inventory systems, resource allocation. I excelled at documentation, creating paper trails that couldn't be disputed. Sergeant First Class Ellison, our direct supervisor, praised my attention to detail. Every signature matters. Lane, every receipt, every record. Documentation is defense. He didn't know how right he was. The body cam came from a legal equipment demonstration in week 7. Palm-sized civilian legal, designed for personal protection. These are becoming standard for delivery drivers, medical workers, anyone who needs liability protection, the instructor explained. Military members can use them off-duty for personal security. I bought one with my first paycheck. $69 that felt like armor. Graduation day arrived gray and humid. Mom sent a text, "Proud of you." Roy sent nothing, which was its own gift. As we stood in formation, newly minted soldiers, Ellison pulled me aside. "Lane, you've got potential, but I see that look, seen it before. Whatever you're going back to, remember you're military now. That comes with resources. Legal support, medical support, Emergency response support. You're not alone anymore. He handed me his direct number. That's 24/7, official or unofficial problems. That night, Red Owl met at a bar off base. We didn't talk about families or futures. Vega programmed all our phones with each other's numbers, backup contacts, emergency protocols. Price set up location sharing. Moreno made us all promise to update our medical emergency contacts to each other instead of family. We're battle buddies now, she said, raising her beer. That means something. Means we've got extraction protocols, Price added. Means nobody fights alone, Vega finished. I fingered the body cam in my pocket, thinking about the metal box hidden in my barracks locker, about Mom's nervous texts asking when I'd visit, about Roy's silence that felt like a storm gathering. What if someone needs extraction from a civilian situation? I asked. They exchanged glances. Price pulled up something on his phone. Military justice regulations regarding domestic violence, base legal services, emergency response procedures. Then we follow protocol. Ellison's voice came from behind us. He'd arrived for a farewell drink. And we protect our own. Clear, clear, Sergeant. We chorused. I had discipline now. I had witnesses. I had a plan forming like morning PT structured, purposeful, achievable. The bus ride back to Maple Ridge for my first leave felt like approaching a combat zone. But this time, I wasn't going in unarmed. The house smelled the same cigarettes, cheap beer, and that underlying scent of fear I'd never been able to name until I'd lived without it. Mom had texted about a family dinner 3 times, each message more nervous than the last. I'd responded once. I'll be there. Simple. Military efficient. I arrived at 6:15 p.m., still in my ACUs because Roy hated anything that reminded him other authorities existed. Look who decided to grace us with her presence. Roy said from his throne, the same recliner, more worn, still positioned to monitor all exits. His eyes tracked over my uniform with disgust. Playing soldier girl now. Good to see you too, Roy. I kept my voice neutral, steady. Basic had taught me to weather worse than his contempt. Mom fluttered between kitchen and dining room, setting out the good plates, the ones we used maybe twice a year. Her hands shook placing the silverware. She'd lost weight, her collarbones sharp beneath a sweater I'd bought her 3 Christmases ago. How was training, honey? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Educational. I sat strategically back to wall, clear path to door, body cam in my chest pocket angled toward Roy. I learned a lot about chain of command, documentation, resource allocation. Roy snorted. Fancy words for taking orders and pushing papers? Least you're finally good for something. Speaking of you getting paid yet. There it was. 17 minutes in. New record. Direct deposit to my account. I watched his jaw tighten. The one only I can access. Family helps family, he said, standing, 6'2" of entitled rage. Your mother's been struggling while you've been playing army. Time to contribute. I've been contributing since I was 16. The words came out calm, factual. Every paycheck from the diner, every dollar from tutoring. That college fund that mysteriously disappeared. Should I continue? He crossed the room in 3 strides. Mom made a sound half protest, half whimper. I didn't move, didn't flinch. Drill Sergeant Rodriguez's voice echoed, steady breathing, solid stance, document everything. You got a smart mouth now. His breath reeked of whiskey and menace. Military teach you that. Military taught me my rights. The slap came fast muscle memory for him, expected by me. What he didn't expect was for me to take it without cowering. My face burned, tears automatic but controlled. I tasted copper where my teeth cut my cheek. Feel better, I asked quietly. He grabbed my phone from the table. Let's see who you've been talking to, telling lies about this family. That's private property. I touched my pocket carefully, activating the body cam with practiced subtlety. Return it, please. My house, my rules. Actually, I stood slowly. I'm an active duty service member. That phone contains military communications. Taking it constitutes interference with military property. Would you like me to explain the penalties, or should I just call the MPs directly?" His face went purple. Mom stepped between us too late. Always too late. But trying. "Please, both of you. Move. Lydia." He shoved her aside. She hit the wall, a picture frame crashing down. I pulled out my personal phone, the backup Price insisted we all carry. 3 dots sent to Red Owl. Location shared. Then, following protocol, a message to Sergeant Ellison. Domestic violence in progress. 247 Birch Street. Maple Ridge, North Cascadia. Local law enforcement needed. I am recording. Roy lunged for the second phone. I sidestepped muscle memory from combat training. He stumbled, caught himself on the table. "You little—" "Stop!" My voice carried command presence I didn't know I possessed. "Roy Maddox, you are being recorded. You have assaulted me and Mom. I have notified military police and my chain of command. Every second you continue makes this worse for you." He laughed ugly, dismissive. "You think your soldier boys care about family business." My phone buzzed. Vega. 10 minutes out. Price. Ellison contacted local PD. Moreno. Medkit ready. Document injuries. "They're not boys," I said. "And this isn't family. Family doesn't leave bruises." He picked up a beer bottle, weighing it. Mom sobbed quietly. Blood dripped from my nose onto my uniform, dark spots on camouflage. "You going to hit a uniformed service member with a weapon?" I asked. "Add federal charges to state ones, or are you going to put it down and wait for the cops like someone who thinks he's done nothing wrong?" 7 minutes. Vega's rental car squealed into the driveway, then another vehicle, another. Headlights flooded the living room through thin curtains. Roy squinted, confused. "What the hell?" Red Owl entered in formation. Vega first, phone out, recording. Moreno with her medkit, moving straight to Mom. Price positioning himself between Roy and the exit. They moved like we'd drilled this, smooth and purposeful. Behind them, Sergeant Ellison in civilian clothes but carrying himself with unmistakable military authority. 2 Maple Ridge PD officers flanked him, hands on service weapons. "Mr. Maddox!" Ellison's voice filled the room. "Step away from private lane." Roy looked around, wildly surrounded, outnumbered, documented. The bottle slipped from his fingers, beer foaming across his carpet. "This is private property, which you're about to be removed from," the senior officer said. "We have a recorded assault on military personnel, domestic violence in progress, and about 6 witnesses. You want to add resisting arrest." I touched my nose, definitely broken. Moreno appeared with gauze. Gentle hands checking damage while maintaining evidence integrity. She photographed everything, the blood, the swelling already starting, Mom's bruised shoulder. "I want him arrested," I said clearly. "For the recording. I want a restraining order. I want to press full charges." Roy exploded toward me one last time. 3 people moved simultaneously. Ellison, Price, and the younger cop. Roy hit the floor face first, cuffs clicking before he could process what happened. "Threatening a service member after being warned," Ellison noted calmly. "That's an enhancement on the charges." As they hauled Roy up, his eyes met mine. For the first time in 12 years, I saw fear there. Real fear. "You're done," I said quietly. "We're done being afraid of you." The body cam had captured everything. 23 minutes of clear documentation. The beginning of the end of Roy Maddox's reign. The emergency room at Maple Ridge General felt surreal. Last time I'd been here, I'd lied about falling downstairs. Now Moreno stood beside me, documenting every detail while the nurse, the same one from 3 years ago, took photos for the legal record. "I remember you," the nurse said quietly. "Those stairs were pretty violent back then, too." "Yeah." I held the ice pack to my nose. "But I've got better balance now." She squeezed my shoulder. "Good for you, honey." Sergeant Ellison had taken control like this was a military operation. By 9:45 p.m., we had a command center at the police station. Price set up laptops, creating digital copies of everything. Vega organized evidence into prosecutable categories. The body cam footage was downloaded, backed up in triplicate, chain of custody documented. Private Lane. Ellison sat across from me in the interview room. I need you to understand your options. Military legal assistance is available. The base JAG office can provide counsel. You have victims' advocacy resources. This isn't just a civilian matter anymore. He assaulted active duty military. The detective, a tired-looking woman named Morrison, added, The emergency restraining order is already in process. It'll be served tonight. But your mother, she's hesitant. Mom. She sat in another room. Moreno still with her, applying butterfly bandages to a cut I hadn't noticed. 12 years of conditioning warred against one night of intervention. Can I see her? They led me down the hall. Mom looked smaller than ever, wrapped in a hospital blanket despite the warm night. When she saw me, fresh tears started. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Harper. I know. I sat carefully, everything aching. But sorry isn't enough anymore. I need you to choose, him or safety. You can't have both. Where would I go? How would I? The house is in his name. My credit's destroyed. I don't even have access to my own paychecks anymore. Vega looked up from her laptop. Actually, about that, Mrs. Lane, did you know Roy opened 6 credit cards in Harper's name and 3 in yours? Mom's face went white. What? Identity theft, Price said. Federal crime. Also found 2 accounts where your direct deposit was changed without authorization. That's wire fraud. I pulled out my metal box retrieved from the car before coming to the station. Years of evidence spilled across the table. Photos, recordings, medical bills, financial documents. Mom stared at it all, seeing the systematic destruction laid out like evidence at a crime scene, which it was. You kept all this? I thought maybe someday I'd be brave enough to use it. I touched my swollen face. Turns out I just needed backup. Detective Morrison examined each piece. This is extensive, with the body cam footage from tonight, financial crimes, and documented pattern of abuse. He's looking at significant time. But we need both of you on board. Mom's hands shook. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Ma'am. Ellison's voice was gentle but firm. Strength isn't required, just honesty. We'll handle the rest. There's a program, Morrison added. Harbor Safe. Emergency housing for domestic violence survivors. They can place you tonight. Help with legal advocacy, financial counseling, everything. I'll lose everything, Mom whispered. You've already lost everything, I said. You just haven't admitted it yet. Harsh, but true. She looked at me, really looked for the first time in years. When did you get so strong? When I stopped waiting for someone else to save us. She signed the papers, gave her statement, let them photograph her injuries. By midnight, Roy was in holding, charges filed: assault, domestic violence, violation of an emergency protection order he hadn't even received yet because he'd violated it preemptively by destroying property at the house while we were gone. The neighbor's security camera caught him throwing Mom's things onto the lawn. The financial crimes would come later, once the forensic accountant reviewed everything. Vega had already found $17,000 in misappropriated funds, not counting the fraudulent cards. Where are you staying tonight? Ellison asked. Mom was going to Harbor Safe, a secure location Roy wouldn't know. I had a motel room, courtesy of the Army's Emergency Assistance Fund for service members experiencing domestic violence. We've got watch shifts set up, Price said. Roy posts bail. We'll know immediately. He won't make bail, Morrison said. Not with federal charges pending. Not with assaulting military personnel. Judge Hendricks has a son in Afghanistan. He doesn't look kindly on anyone who attacks service members. 230A, The motel room was clean. Quiet. Moreno had left Tylenol and water on the nightstand. Vega set up a security camera facing the door, probably illegal. Definitely comforting. Price sent updates every hour. My phone buzzed. Mom, from Harbor Safe. The room has a lock, my own lock. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Then another text. Thank you for being brave enough for both of us. I typed back, we're going to win this. For the first time, I actually believed it. The system I'd joined had become the system that would save us. Protocol, documentation, chain of command. Everything Roy mocked about military structure would be his downfall. I opened my laptop, began typing my formal statement. Every detail, every incident, 12 years condensed into prosecutable facts. At the bottom, I added, I am requesting full prosecution, maximum protection orders, and complete financial restitution. I am prepared to testify. I have extensive documentation. I am not withdrawing these charges under any circumstances. Signed, Private Harper Lane, 3rd Logistics Battalion, 128th Brigade. My name had never carried weight before. Now it carried the full force of the United States Army behind it. Roy Maddox had no idea what he'd started when he'd slapped a soldier, but he was about to find out. Roy's campaign started 3 days later, exactly as I'd predicted. Ungrateful bitch destroys family. The Facebook post read. His sister shared it. His drinking buddies commented. The narrative spread through Maple Ridge like spilled beer sticky, pervasive, sour. She came back from basic training thinking she's hot shit, attacked her own mother. I was defending my wife. Price screenshot everything before Roy thought to delete it. Defamation, witness intimidation, violation of the protection order's no contact clause. Each post added charges. Let him talk, Detective Morrison advised over the phone. Every lie he tells publicly makes our truth stronger in court. But it was Mom who surprised me. She called from Harbor Safe, voice steadier than I'd heard in years. Harper, I need to tell you something. About the money. She'd been documenting too, secretly, incompletely, but trying. Bank statements hidden in her work locker. Photos of bruises she'd never shown me. A journal in her car detailing every time Roy took her cards, changed her passwords, forged her signature. I was too scared to use it, but I couldn't throw it away either. It's like I was waiting for... I don't know what I was waiting for. You were waiting for backup, I said. Just like I was. The Harbor Safe advocate, a woman named Claire who'd survived her own war, helped Mom organize everything. Together. They found $93,000 in financial abuse over 8 years. Money drained from retirement accounts. A second mortgage Mom never signed for. Life insurance policies cashed out. This is systematic economic terrorism, Claire said during our strategy meeting. Textbook coercive control. Red Owl mobilized like we were planning a convoy route through hostile territory. Vega deep dove into social media, archiving Roy's digital footprint, the dating profile active while married, the gambling sites, the cryptocurrency account funded with Mom's 401k. Price mapped out Roy's network, identifying who might provide alibis, who might flip. Moreno connected Mom with trauma counseling, real help instead of the pills she'd been numbing herself with. Ellison coordinated with JAG, ensuring military resources stayed available. The Army takes care of its own, he reminded me. That includes protecting them from domestic terrorists. Because that's what Roy was, a terrorist in his own home. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The nurse from the hospital, Sandra, reached out through official channels. She'd kept notes unofficial, but detailed about my visits over the years. The broken wrist at 16, the concussion at 19, the ribs at 22. I documented everything in my personal records, she said. Every time you lied about falling, every bruise that didn't match your story. I couldn't report without your consent, but I couldn't do nothing either. 7 years of medical evidence we didn't know existed. Roy's public defender, a tired man named Garrett, tried negotiating. My client is willing to attend anger management, marriage counseling. This doesn't need to destroy a family. The family's already destroyed. The prosecutor upgraded to Assistant DA Catherine Chin. Given the federal charges, responded, Your client's looking at 15 to 20 between state and federal charges. Want to see the evidence list? It's 43 pages. The smear campaign escalated. Roy got his sister to call my command, claiming I was mentally unstable, had attacked him unprovoked. The call was recorded, forwarded to the prosecutor, added to the witness intimidation charges. He's panicking, Morrison observed. Guilty people always overcommunicate. Mom struggled with the visibility. Maple Ridge was small. Everyone knew everyone. Her co-workers whispered. Her sister, Roy's defender, called her a traitor. The grocery store became a gauntlet of stares. But something else happened too. Women approached her quietly, squeezed her hand, whispered, "Good for you." The librarian slipped her a card for a support group. The bank teller expedited her new account paperwork, waiving fees without being asked. "I didn't know there were so many of us," Mom told me, wonder in her voice. "There always are," Claire said. "Silence just makes us invisible." Vega found the smoking gun on day 9. Roy had a previous arrest in Montana domestic violence. Charges dropped when the victim disappeared. Some digging revealed she'd fled to Canada, too terrified to testify. "Pattern of behavior," Chen said, adding it to the file. "This just became about protecting the community, not just your family." The metadata price extracted from my recordings proved crucial. Dates, times, locations embedded in the files, impossible to fake. The body cam footage was pristine, every second admissible. Roy tried one last manipulation. A suicide threat, posted publicly, deleted quickly, but not quickly enough. Price had automated screenshots running. Instead of sympathy, it brought a psychiatric hold. Evaluation finding him manipulative but not genuinely suicidal. Another charge, false emergency reporting. Mom's testimony prep revealed the depth of control I'd never seen. Bank accounts monitored, work schedules controlled, friends systematically alienated. She'd been a prisoner with invisible bars. "You saved my life," she told me after a particularly hard session. "I know you think you were saving yourself, but you saved me too." "We saved each other," I corrected. The Maple Ridge community split. Team Roy shrinking daily as evidence mounted. Team Harper growing as women recognized their own stories and ours. The local news picked it up. Local soldier exposes years of abuse, though we declined interviews on advice of counsel. Roy's family money couldn't buy him out of this. His contractor reputation crumbled as clients reconsidered hiring someone facing federal fraud charges. His drinking buddies distanced themselves when the gambling debt surfaced. "He's losing everything," Mom said one evening. Not with satisfaction, but with a kind of exhausted relief. "No," I said, checking the latest update from Chen. "He's facing consequences. There's a difference." We were 10 days from trial. Roy in custody, bail revoked after the suicide stunt. Mom getting stronger and Harbor safe. Me back on base but ready to testify. Red Owl maintained their watch. "Nobody fights alone," Vega reminded me daily. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Roy thought he'd been the king of 247 Birch Street. He was about to learn he'd just been a common criminal with delusions of power. The call came at 11:23 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mom's voice, high and terrified. "He's here. He's breaking down the door." Roy had made bail. Nobody had notified us. I was 200 miles away at Fort Clearwater. My hands moved without thought. 3 dots to Red Owl. Emergency alert to Ellison. 911 on the backup phone while keeping Mom on the line. "Where are you exactly?" "The house. I came to get photo albums while he was supposed to be in jail." "Harper. He's screaming about killing us both." Glass shattered in the background. Roy's voice, drunk and raging. "Lydia, you lying bitch, you're going to pay for this. Back door, Mom, now. Get to Mrs. Patterson's house." Our elderly neighbor, the one who'd pretended not to hear violence for a decade but whose security camera had caught Roy's property destruction. "I can't, he's—" "Move," my drill sergeant voice. She moved. I heard her running, breathing hard. Roy's pursuit, then a door slamming. Mrs. Patterson's voice, surprisingly firm. I've got a shotgun and already called the cops. Roy Maddox, get off my property. Price was already tracking. Maple Ridge units dispatched. Ellison's calling the sheriff directly. Vega and Moreno are 70 miles closer than you. They're moving. I'm coming. I grabbed my keys, my emergency bag, the body cam. Negative. Ellison's voice on the conference call Price had set up. You're the victim. You can't engage. That's what he wants to provoke you into something he can use against you. He was right. I hated that he was right. The longest 17 minutes of my life. Price narrating updates. Units on scene. Roy's barricaded inside. He's destroyed the living room. Wait, he's got something. Gas can, Mom whispered. She was still on my phone. He's got the gas can from the garage. The tactical response unit arrived as Roy doused the front porch with gasoline. He stood there with a lighter, screaming about respect, about ungrateful women, about his house, his rules. It's not even his house, Mom said, voice strange. I inherited it from my mother. He just made me put him on the deed. Another financial crime. Another chain around her neck he'd placed while calling it love. The negotiator tried talking. Roy responded by lighting the porch on fire. Not the dramatic explosion he'd probably imagined. Gasoline doesn't work like movies, but enough flame to trigger response. They moved in while he was beating at the flames, realizing he'd trapped himself. Tackle, cuffs. Miranda rights delivered while firefighters handled the minimal damage. The whole thing captured on multiple cameras, dash cams, body cams. Mrs. Patterson's security system, and Vega, who'd arrived in time to film the arrest. Arson, attempted murder, stalking, violation of protection order. Detective Morrison sounded exhausted but satisfied. No bail this time. No judge in the state would grant it. Mom stood in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen, wrapped in a quilt older than me, watching through the window as they loaded Roy into the patrol car. Our elderly neighbor stood beside her, shotgun indeed visible, proving that sometimes the witnesses who stayed silent were just waiting for permission to speak. I should have done something years ago, Mrs. Patterson said. When you were just a girl. I'm sorry. You did something tonight, Mom replied. That matters. The house was a crime scene now. Yellow tape, evidence markers, the smell of smoke and gasoline. Red Owl arrived in stages Vega and Moreno first, then Price, who'd driven through the night, then Ellison, who'd used personal leave to be there. We stood in the destroyed living room at 3:45 a.m., cataloging damage. The TV smashed, family photos burned in the sink, Mom's wedding china in pieces, but also, he destroyed his own stuff too. Moreno observed. His recliner, his trophies. This isn't just rage, it's self-destruction. Good, I said, and meant it. The assistant DA, Catherine Ross. I'd been wrong about her last name earlier, met us at the station. This is gift-wrapped. Arson with special circumstances. Attempted murder of multiple victims. Witness intimidation through violence. We're looking at 25 to life now. He'll plea, his defender said, looking defeated. No jury would acquit after this. But Roy didn't want to plea. He wanted to fight, to have his say, to make us all pay for challenging him. His sister mortgaged her house for a private attorney who took one look at the evidence and advised taking any deal offered. Roy fired him, then the next one, then decided to represent himself. Nail in his own coffin, Ross said. A narcissist defending himself is a prosecutor's dream. Mom moved into Transitional Housing Harbor Safe's Next Step program. 6 months of subsidized rent while rebuilding credit, finding therapy, learning to exist without someone else's rage as her North Star. The house would be repaired with insurance money, then sold. Her inheritance finally actually hers. I want to use the money for college, she told me. Nursing degree. I'm 47, not dead. You're free, I corrected. That's what you are. The trial date set 3 weeks out. Roy in maximum security after attacking his cellmate. His family finally silent, perhaps understanding what we'd always known: he was dangerous to everyone, not just us. Red Owl maintained their watch rotation even though the threat was contained. Habits, Price said. Good ones are hard to build, stupid to break. Vega had compiled everything into a digital case file backed up in 12 locations, encrypted, tsunami-proof. Your story needs to survive, she said. Other women need to know it's possible. The fire had been Roy's final mistake. Arson was federal if it involved interstate commerce, and Mom's home daycare business qualified. FBI involvement meant resources Roy never imagined facing. He thought he was burning evidence, Ellison mused, reviewing footage of Roy pouring gasoline. Instead, he lit himself on fire, metaphorically speaking. Mrs. Patterson became Mom's unexpected ally, their shared fence line now a bridge instead of a barrier. She testified in the grand jury about years of witnessed abuse, her guilt transformed into action. I was scared of him too, she admitted, but watching your daughter stand up to him. Brave spreads, I guess. The grand jury indicted on all counts, 23 separate charges. The foreman, a veteran himself, shook my hand after, "Thank you for your service," he said. Both kinds. I stood outside the courthouse, Mom beside me, Red Owl around us, Ellison proud, Morrison satisfied, Ross confident, Roy inside, caged, facing decades of cages. He'd broken into the house trying to reclaim his kingdom. Instead, he'd sealed his own fate. The text from Mom that night, "I changed the locks today, bought them myself, installed them myself. My hands didn't shake once." Freedom, it turned out, was built one deadbolt at a time. The North Cascadia County Courthouse stood like a brick monument to consequences. 3 weeks of preparation led to this Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, the state versus Roy Maddox. He'd lost weight in custody, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose. His court-appointed attorney, the fourth one, looked resigned. Roy had insisted on participating in his defense, which meant he could cross-examine witnesses, including us. "You sure about this?" Ross asked one final time. "I've been sure for 12 years, I said. Just didn't have backup until now. Mom sat beside me in a navy dress Harbor Safe had helped her pick professional, credible, nothing Roy had ever bought her, her hands steady on her purse. Behind us, Red Owl in civilian clothes but military bearing, Ellison in his dress uniform, Mrs. Patterson with her church group, Sandra the nurse with her documented suspicions, an army Roy never saw coming. All rise. So, Judge Patricia Brennan presided, former prosecutor. No patience for grandstanding. She'd already denied 3 of Roy's motions to dismiss, his demands to represent himself completely, and his request to bar military personnel from court. Ross opened with the body cam footage. Roy's slap echoed through the courtroom, his threats to Mom, the destruction of property, the arson. 40 minutes of systematic evidence establishing pattern, escalation, premeditation. Mr. Maddox wants you to believe this was a family dispute that got out of hand, but this was 12 years of documented terrorism, financial slavery, physical violence, psychological torture, and when his victims found their voices, attempted murder. Roy's attorney tried damage control. A man struggling with alcohol, job stress, a stepdaughter who rejected his attempts at discipline, marital problems that spiraled. Objection, Ross said calmly. Defense is attempting to retry facts already established in grand jury. Sustained. The first witness, Detective Morrison. She walked through the timeline, the evidence, the escalation. Roy attempted to object 6 times. Judge Brennan shut him down each time. Mr. Maddox, you'll have opportunity to cross-examine. Until then, remain silent. Mom testified on day 2. Roy tried to break her with his stare. She looked at me instead, at Red Owl, at her new life waiting outside this room. He isolated me from my family, controlled my finances, hit me when I asked questions. I thought it was my fault. I thought I wasn't trying hard enough to make him happy. "What changed?" Ross asked. My daughter came home wearing the uniform of someone who protects others, and I realized I'd never protected her. Roy's cross-examination was brutal stupidity. Isn't it true you're lying to get the house? The house I inherited from my mother that you made me add your name to know. Roy, I'm telling the truth to get my life back. You never complained before. I was terrified before. You're being dramatic. Mom stood slightly, voice carrying. You set our house on fire rather than face consequences. Who's being dramatic? Judge Brennan intervened. Mr. Maddox, ask questions, not arguments. Sandra's testimony about my medical history brought gasps. 7 documented suspicious injuries. Photos from my sealed juvenile medical records. Court-ordered unsealed for this trial. Did the patient ever admit abuse? Roy's attorney asked. No, but broken ribs don't happen from tripping over homework. Vega testified about the digital evidence. Price about the financial crimes. Moreno about Mom's injuries that night. Professional, devastating, undeniable. Then my turn. I wore my Class A uniform. Every ribbon earned. Name tape Clear Lane. Not his name. Never his name. Private Lane, Ross began. Tell us about December 3rd. My birthday. Forgotten every year since Roy moved in. But that's not what you're asking about. I detailed everything. The fear childhood, the escalating violence, the decision to enlist, the night he attacked me for having boundaries. Roy couldn't contain himself during cross-examination. You always were ungrateful. Mr. Maddox. Judge Brennan's voice could have frozen fire. That's not a question. Why didn't you report earlier if it was so bad? He managed. Because I didn't have witnesses before. You made sure of that, isolated us, convinced us no one would believe us. But the Army taught me something you never understood. Nobody fights alone. You're destroying our family. You destroyed our family. I'm just documenting it. He lost composure completely. You little bitch, you planned this. The bailiff moved forward. Judge Brennan's gavel cracked. Mr. Maddox, you're in contempt. Another outburst and you'll be removed. This is my trial. No, Judge Brennan said. This is the people's trial. You're just the defendant. Character witnesses for us included my drill sergeant via video deposition, explaining the signs of abuse he'd recognized. Ellison detailing military resources for domestic violence survivors. Claire from Harbor Safe Statistics on economic abuse. Roy had no character witnesses. His sister had withdrawn support after the arson. His drinking buddies stayed away. His former clients wanted distance from federal charges. Closing arguments were surgical. Ross laid out 23 charges with evidence for each. The defense mumbled about alcohol counseling and misunderstandings. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Time enough for coffee. Not much else. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 23 times. Roy's face went white, then red, then something beyond color. He lunged toward me. Ellison and Price were already moving, but the bailiffs got there first. Roy hit the floor hard, screaming about respect, family values, ungrateful women. Judge Brennan watched him being restrained with disgust. Sentencing in 2 weeks. Defendant remanded to custody. No bail. We stood as they dragged him out. Our eyes met one last time. I saw hate, rage, disbelief that consequences existed. I felt nothing. He was already becoming nothing to me. Outside, sunshine felt like absolution. Mom signed papers with the victim's advocate for restitution claims. The civil suit would follow every stolen dollar, every fraudulent charge, every piece of our lives he'd stolen converting to numbers owed. Minimum 15 years before parole eligibility. Ross confirmed. Likely 20 to 25 total. The arson enhancement alone. He'll die in there, Mom said quietly. Not with satisfaction. Just fact. Maybe, Ross said. Or maybe he'll finally learn what powerlessness feels like. Red Owl gathered around us. Ellison shook my hand formally, then pulled me into an embrace. Outstanding courage under fire. Private. Mrs. Patterson invited everyone to her house for coffee and cake she'd baked at 4 a.m. Couldn't sleep. Needed to do something with my hands. We sat in her garden, eating lemon cake, watching Mom laugh at something Vega said. Her first real laugh in 12 years. You did it, Moreno said quietly. We did it, I corrected. Every single one of us. My phone buzzed. 3 dots from Price, but not emergency. Celebration. A photo from inside Roy's empty defendant's chair. I typed back, mission complete, but sitting there, watching my mother plan her nursing school application with Claire, seeing my chosen family celebrate with my blood family, I realized something. The mission wasn't putting Roy away. The mission was this, the after, the rebuilding, the laughter, the freedom. The locksmith arrived at 10 a.m. Sharp, 2 weeks after sentencing. Roy got 28 years. Judge Brennan had stacked the sentences near the maximum, calling him a persistent danger to society who weaponized family bonds. Mom signed the work order with her own name, Lydia Foster, her maiden name restored. The locksmith, a young woman with calloused hands and kind eyes, installed new deadbolts while Mom watched every turn of the screwdriver. First time, the locksmith asked gently. Last time, Mom corrected. First was 12 years ago. Should have changed them then. The house on Birch Street was selling. Insurance had covered the fire damage. Mom was moving to a 2-bedroom apartment near the community college where she'd start nursing prerequisites in the fall. 47 years old. Beginning again. I helped her pack what was worth keeping. Not much. It turned out. Roy's recliner had burned good riddance. His trophies, his collections, his presence all evidence now, locked in some courthouse basement. We donated his clothes to charity, though Mom insisted on washing them first. Even hatred doesn't need to smell like whiskey and rage. The metal box my evidence collection went into the fireplace, not to hide it, but to transform it. We burned each piece ceremonially, the photos of bruises, the medical bills, the audio recordings, each flame a small funeral for who we used to be. Aren't we destroying evidence? Mom asked. Digital copies exist forever, Vega had assured us. Physical copies are just pain taking up space. Red Owl helped with the move. Ellison brought his truck. Price organized logistics like it was a supply run. Moreno labeled boxes with medical precision. Vega set up Mom's new Wi-Fi and security system, military-grade encryption, she promised. Though we all knew the real security came from Roy's federal prisoner number. Mrs. Patterson surprised us with a housewarming gift, a handmade quilt. Every stitch is an apology for my silence, she said. Use it to keep warm in your new life. The apartment was small but bright. 3rd floor, Mom specifically requested higher floors. I want to see threats coming, she'd told the landlord, who'd understood without asking why. We assembled furniture from flat-pack boxes. Price read instructions. Ellison wielded the Allen wrench. Moreno organized hardware. Vega documented everything with photos for the after-action report. She joked, but really for Mom's new photo albums. Pictures of building instead of breaking. The civil suit had concluded quietly. Roy's assets liquidated. His contractor business dissolved. His truck sold at auction. Every penny he'd stolen over 12 years, ordered returned with interest. Not millions, but enough. Enough for Mom's education. Enough for therapy that wasn't about surviving, but about living. Enough for choice. I want to pay you back, Mom said, holding the restitution check. For what? The childhood you didn't get. The father you deserved. The protection I failed. Stop. I took her hands steady now. No more trembling. You survived. That's all I needed you to do. Survive until we could fight together. The key ceremony happened at sunset. Mom had 3 keys to her new place. She gave one to me, one to Mrs. Patterson for emergencies and coffee, and kept one for herself. The sound of the deadbolt engaging wasn't fear anymore. It was sovereignty. My leave ended the next morning. Fort Clearwater waited. But first, one last stop. The North Cascadia County Correctional Facility sat 40 miles inland. Visiting hours started at 8 a.m. I didn't go inside, didn't need to see Roy in his cage. Instead, I stood in the parking lot, looking at the concrete walls topped with razor wire. This is what accountability looks like. I said to no one, to everyone, to the universe that finally delivered justice. A guard changing shifts noticed my uniform, nodded respectfully. Visiting someone, soldier. No, leaving someone. Permanently. He understood without elaboration. Small towns, big stories. Back at Fort Clearwater, I filed my after-action report. Not officially required, but Ellison suggested it. Document your victories too, not just your battles. Red Owl returned to routine. Training exercises, supply runs. Price got promoted. Vega started teaching cybersecurity to other soldiers. Moreno applied to medical school the Army would pay. We maintained our 3-dot system, though emergencies became coffee requests and dinner invitations. Mom texted daily. Small victories, aced my anatomy quiz, made a friend in study group, slept through the night without nightmares. 6 months later, she sent a photo from her white coat ceremony student nurse, beginning clinical rotations. Behind her, a banner read, "It's never too late to become who you were meant to be." Roy had stolen 12 years, but the rest was ours. I kept one photo from the trial. Not of Roy in handcuffs or the guilty verdict, but of Mom and me on the courthouse steps, surrounded by Red Owl, Ellison, Morrison, Ross, Mrs. Patterson, Sandra, all the witnesses who refused to look away. At the bottom, I wrote, "Nobody fights alone." The locksmith had asked Mom if it was her first time changing locks. Last time, she'd said. She was right. There would be no more locks to change, no more exits to memorize, no more evidence to gather. Just doors that opened because we had the keys, and doors that locked because we chose safety. Freedom. It turned out, wasn't complicated. It was a deadbolt turning with a satisfying click. It was a text at 11 p.m. Studying late but happy. It was 3 dots that meant all secure instead of emergency. It was knowing that somewhere in federal prison, a man who thought he owned us was learning what it meant to be owned by the system. But mostly, freedom was this mom, in her own apartment, with her own keys, living her own life. And me, standing watch not because I had to, but because that's what soldiers do. We protect, we defend, we win. Mission complete. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if this story resonated with you, and share your thoughts below. Your own experiences and reflections matter, and this community is built on supporting each other. Remember, nobody fights alone.